Hi, I'm Dave Rogers. I'm a policy advisor with NOFA-Vermont, the Northeast Organic Farming Association. This is another episode in a series of discussions about current policy issues of interest to Vermont and of importance to Vermont agriculture and food systems. Today our discussion was prompted by the plans to put in place a gas pipeline. Vermont Gas Systems is in the process of getting public approval for an extension of their gas pipelines, and this raises all sorts of questions about effects on climate change, our energy future, agricultural lands. And so we have a couple of guests here today who have been involved with this issue and and have been working to address the concerns of communities and of others. We have Andy Simon from 350 Vermont and Nate Palmer from Laughing Tree Farm in Moncton. So I'll just welcome. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your organizations, what your involvement has been with this, and the kind of work you do. Andy?
This is 350 Vermont is a grassroots climate action organization based in Burlington. We have been working primarily on the issue of the tar sands pipeline in the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont, the Portland-Montreal pipeline that's owned by ExxonMobil, and the plan building a web of opposition to the plan to reverse that pipeline, which currently runs from east to west, and the plan to turn it around, run it from west to east, and run tar sands products from Western Canada through it. That's what we've been working on, but there's a direct connection between that and this natural gas plan that we'll get into later. Mm-hmm. And so we've been working at and supporting the organizing around the gas pipeline as well.
Okay, good. Nate?
Well, I run a small farm, a Laughing Tree Farm. It's 77 acres in Moncton, and of course my history is I've been involved with a lot of alternative energy projects, and I think that the best thing that farms can do is to get where they're producing their own energy so that they're independent of the whole fossil fuel system. You know, why work so hard to go out and pay for your fuel when there's plenty of potentials to make your fuel on your own farm? I was looking at originally from the alternative energy project, and when I heard about Vermont Gas doing this build out, I thought, my God, this is going to just really smash alternative energy big time. And of course, you know, the route went from where it was going to be over down through Route 7 in Charlotte and North Ferrisburgh to where suddenly it's coming through Heinsberg and Moncton, and next thing you know they did a route change and it comes right through my backyard. So I've gone from where I have issues with it on the fuel issue to where I have issues with it going through farmland and through my own property as well. So it was just kind of a call to action, you know.
Just to provide a little baseline information. So this project is a proposal to extend an existing pipeline up in northern Vermont and run an extension, I think it's 40-some miles, from Colchester to Middlebury. And this is called phase 1 of the project. It's going to be about a 1-foot diameter pipe, correct?
Yeah, 12 inches.
Put down about 3 to 5 feet underground. And the challenge here for communities and for Vermont Gas Systems is to find a route that is feasible and acceptable to the communities. So that's called phase 1. And then there's a phase 2 of the project, and that will take it from Middlebury down through Cornwall and Shoreham, and then underneath Lake Champlain to International Paper. And then another phase that'll take it down, a third phase to Rutland, and more phases ahead.
Phase 3 is to Rutland, and then phase 4 there's only a one-sentence mention in the whole original filing where they want to hook to the federal pipeline system over on the New York side. So, and there's no reference for sure as to whether it's going to be in Albany or Lake George or where.
So that route, the development of that route, whether or not the projects will go forward, will depend on the Public Service Board here in Vermont issuing a certificate of public good. But that will not happen unless and until a route has been approved. And that's a process where there's a lot of public input. So there are a lot of issues connected with this the route, how it affects communities, how it affects the land. Another concern is the source of the gas. Andy, you said that this is going to be bringing gas from the west.
From Western Canada. That's bringing it in from Alberta, where they're fracking gas in the same region where they're extracting tar sands oil from the land. So they're destroying the land in several different directions, as Nate was talking about. If you look out there, if you look at what's going on out there, it's just horrifying. They've taken the vast sections of the boreal forest and just stripped them right off. For tar sands mining, it's an open pit process, and so they're just like stripping the land of the forest. They take every single bit of vegetation off of it and create these giant open pit mines. For fracking, on the surface, it looks a little bit better. And same thing for there's a fracking process where they get tar sands oil out as well for the deeper deposits. On the surface, you see a bunch of different sort of well heads around, but under the surface, it's making terrible devastation. And in fact, for the tar sands process, they just revealed a leak that's happening in Alberta that nobody knows the exact source of, and nobody knows how to stop an oil leak. That's happening in that same area where they're extracting the fracked gas right now.
So there we have the beginning of the concerns. Where is this gas coming from? How is it being produced? And is it a responsible decision on the part of Vermont communities and government to allow that gas to come here? Now,
can I just say one more word about that? Is that besides the obvious impact on the land, what's the impact on the communities out there is tremendous. These are mostly indigenous communities. They have been hunting and fishing in that land for a long time, and once you've stripped off all the vegetation and chased out all the wildlife from this land, that just can't go on anymore. And they're totally in violation of the treaties that Canada has signed with those tribes, but they're just going ahead and doing it anyway. There's so much money at stake that they're just pushing aside any considerations like that.
So these, we'll stay, for a moment, we'll stay on this bigger picture, and we'll stay with you, Andy, for a minute, because there is the whole question and connection with extracting this gas, shipping it, on climate change and effects on climate change, greenhouse gases and such. Can you just talk a little bit about the carbon footprint of this gas and of this larger project? And
sure. Vermont Gas and other gas producers and shippers are really fond of saying that it has less of an impact on greenhouse gas emissions in the world and in Vermont, and that will lower our carbon footprint, but that's from a very narrow perspective. It really is just looking at what happens when you burn this fuel. So comparing number two, heating oil to natural gas, when you burn it, in fact, there's about 30% less carbon emissions when you burn it. But that doesn't look at the whole life cycle picture of extraction, of transport, of storage, and everything that leads up to the point where it's actually coming into your home or into your vehicle or into whatever you're using it for. And if you compare it that way, if you really look at the whole life cycle, including all the leakage that's happening, that's been acknowledged by the company, of methane, which is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide by quite a number of factors.
Most of this gas is methane, is that correct?
Most of it is methane. It's like 99% methane. Yeah. And when you look at that, it's actually a worse fuel alternative than coal. Ah. And coal, of course, is always stigmatized as the worst kind of fuel. Well, natural gas is really, from a life cycle point of view, it's really worse than coal.
Because I know the gas company says, hey, this is a responsible approach to our energy future, and you're pointing out, if you look at the entire view, if you do the proper accounting,
right,
you'll find out that it's not at all a plus in that regard.
That's what Vermont Gas has been able to do, is they say we're a distribution company and it's cleaner at the burner tip, so they're advertising the good part of it, but they don't want to bring along any of the bad baggage.
Right.
You know, because, oh, we're not really drilling for it, but you know, you have to be
that's-
responsible for what they're doing. You know,
And Vermont Gas is owned by Gas Metro, a Canadian company, which in turn is owned by
Enbridge.
30% of it's owned by Enbridge.
which
the same.
also, do they own tar sands?
They don't own. No, Enbridge involvement with tar sands is as a shipper. They
okay.
own. They're one of the biggest pipeline companies in Canada. So they are. They own part of the pipeline network, the transportation network that brings the tar sands oil to to various places to ship it out, and they were the ones that were responsible for the giant oil spill in Kalamazoo, Michigan 3 years ago. That was Enbridge.
So, Vermont Gas, people think of it as a little local or a Vermont concern, but it's really
It's
sort
part
of a part of a huge
Yeah.
multinational type.
It's like the fingertip
structure.
of something
Yes.
a lot bigger. You know?
Which is also part of the same corporate structure that Green Mountain Power is part of. So when
Right.
you start talking about wind turbines, which this is not about, but when you start looking at the corporate network, it's hard to pluck one string without having the whole thing.
Yes,
vibrate.
that's the nature of our global.
Yeah, it's like you talk about energy independence in Vermont. And here we have one corporation that owns our gas and our electric utilities and the transportation lines, and now wanting to expand the pipelines. How is that independent? That's total
Right.
dependency.
Yes.
You can't be any more hooked up than having a pipe and electric line bringing everything to you.
I think it's an interesting observation that a couple of years ago the legislature banned fracking in Vermont. It was an easy decision. We don't have any frackable deposits, I guess.
They haven't discovered them yet.
But at the same time, we feel it's okay to have this wholesale fracking and very irresponsible environmental practices someplace else, as long as we get the gas at the other end. So,
And we do have some options on gas gas leases in this state. Back in, I think it was 72 or 3, they came through and checked for gas. And,
oh, really?
The big old thumper trucks came right down Route 7 doing the seismic tests, and they did a lot of leases and down through Shoreham and Cornwall and down in that direction. And a lot of the farmers signed on because they said, "Oh, it's free money," And at the time they said, "Oh, there's gas deposits there, but it's not economically feasible to go after it." Well, in the 70s, they were saying the same thing in Demick. They've got a lot bigger play there. Our gas is very spotty, but there's still the potential that eventually, if you get to the point where the price of the gas can be enough to make it worthwhile, there could be extraction here.
Well, the same thing was true of tar sands. That they've known about those tar sands deposits since the 1940s.
Yeah,
how do we get it out?
But it's like, how do we get it out? How do we make it profitable? And it wasn't until really the 80s and 90s where it even became feasible to think about the price was high enough, just like you were saying. The price started getting up high enough, and the technology was getting better. So, this giant deposit of oil that was previously really unusable all of a sudden became
It's always been there.
profitable.
Now it's worthwhile to go after it, and the whole process of the horizontal fracking is just such a destruction. It's crazy to think that you can crack your earth and get all this gas out and it's not going to affect anything.
Well, as we were just saying, it might not affect us here in Vermont because it's not in our backyard, but we've got to have a larger view. But there are businesses along the route, communities, homeowners who are looking forward to this and viewing it as a way to get a cheaper fuel for heating their homes and such. And so how do you respond to those folks who are thinking in that way?
Well, in terms of price, the price is low right now because there's an abundance of gas that's available without a lot of effort, without a lot of transport involved. That is to say, in North America, there's a lot of gas that's currently available. But the price has been really volatile, and if you follow the pricing over the years, there's no reason to think that the level of the current price is going to stay the same. As soon as that pipeline is in, as soon as people are hooked up to gas, as soon as there's no alternative, that price is going to go up. And and there's that sort of third bottom line question too. It's like, what is the price? What's the price that we're paying for this gas in terms of the fracking, in terms of the impact on the people where at the other end of the pipeline, and what's the impact on the Earth as a whole?
Yes.
I mean, Vermont has a nice little thing going here.
Yeah, where we
with
try
our,
to
you know,
stay clean and
no
natural.
fracking and right sustainable energy, and we've got this comprehensive energy plan where we're going to get 90% of renewable, so-called renewable energy by 2050. But we're part of a global system. We're not.
We certainly are.
We're not isolated from the rest of the world. And if we're destroying the Earth over there, it's not going to be different over here.
Yeah.
So there is a short-term, there is a potential short-term gain. I mean, there's no denying that, if you look at your bill this month and you look at your bill the next month, once you've hooked up the natural gas, for a little while your bill is going to be lower. But I mean, one of the problems in this country in general is that we do tend to think pretty short-term.
Real short.
And it's time to start thinking longer term about what the impact is going to be, both on your pocketbook and on the planet.
And you don't even have to look that far at the price of it. It's like right now it's under $4 a million BTUs for natural gas. Before 2008, it was $14.80 per million BTU. So I mean, that was only a few years ago. It was 4 times the price that it is now. So there's no reason to think it's not going to go back to that.
So we talked about how it affects communities and land far away, but closer to home. One of the great concerns, this is how NOFA came into the issue, is how will this pipeline affect our agricultural lands? Will the soils be protected in terms of certified organic agriculture? There are standards that farmers need to sort of live by. And if a pipeline company is coming through your property and digging up the land, what effect does that have on the soil, and how might that affect your status as a certified producer? So that's your focus there, on the land, effects on the land. So tell us a little bit about how you see that, the problems and the concerns you have about that really on the ground kind of concern.
A lot of it is, just the attitude that they have. It's like, not everybody's connected to the land. Some people are and some people aren't. It doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. It's just the way you look at things. And the gas people just don't seem to have that connection at all. It's just rocks and dirt. You just dig a trench, put in a pipe, throw a little grass seed on it, it'll be fine. But I see this having a lot of effect on the soil. You're trying, especially when you're doing it organically, you're trying to nurture your soil and give a good soil and have, grow your soil so your soil will take care of you. And when you do this kind of damage and destruction, you're going to set back the soil by years. We called the extension service and talked to Heather Darby and said, what do you think this is going to do? And she said, well, and we sent her the weights of the equipment that we're going to go across and the amount of impact it was going to have. And she says, with your heavy clay soils, it's probably going to set you back 10 years. Easily. If it ever recovers.
So the company is able to, if there's a certificate of public good issued, they can come in and sort of take the land by eminent domain.
They're going to have to.
And with some compensation, but not getting the compensation enough for destroying the soils. And there's a corridor that they will have control over, not only during the construction, but for eternity, essentially. And they'll have the opportunity to come in, not just during the construction phase, but to do any kind of maintenance if there are leaks. If they need to put in a 24-inch pipe instead of it, they'll rip it up, put in another one. So I know one concern we've had is, okay, so if you hold their hand during the construction process and make sure that they're doing it right, who's to say and what's to say that when they come in the future, that same kind of care and sort of supervision will be there.
And how they supervise it too. I mean, we had a meeting with Vermont Gas and one of our other neighbors and said, like, what's going on? How are you dealing with this? And we said, how are you going to monitor this pipeline to make sure there's not an issue with it. They said, well, we check the pressure at the main valve, and we check at the gate valves, and if there's a loss, you know, we go out and see what's going on, and we walk the thing at least once a month, and we fly over it. And everybody says, well, this is a gas, you know, you're not going to see a geyser coming up out of the ground. What are you looking for? They said, well, we're looking for the vegetation to turn yellow, and then we hone in on where there's a problem.
Just what a farmer wants to hear.
Yeah, by the time your vegetation is turned yellow, and of course, this is Vermont, you know, we got a few months where everything's dormant, so if there's a leak out there under the snow, you know, that's going to go undetected. And
organic farms are certified and they need to maintain an organic system plan. How will you treat the soil? How will you address concerns? How will you maintain those soils and build them in a process of continuous improvement? And this comes in and just sort of like puts a wound through the land.
Exactly.
And we've been telling them, you are going to have to really step up. If this pipeline comes across certified organic land, or land that may become certified,
I mean,
and there's a lot of organic land and farmers who wish to become certified in your neck of the woods, how will you ensure that farmers will be able to comply with the organic system plan, and those in the future who have a pipeline under their ground and want to become organic, in the easements and in the contracts that companies develop with landowners, how will that process look? How will, what will the supervision level be like? How will we be sure that they will respect the organic system plan? And you know, we've had a few ideas about what we would like to see in terms of an easement. So you know, the connection here to our energy future is, I guess we were talking about this earlier. I mean, we put a pipeline in, it has a life of decades, and we have poured investment into a fossil fuel energy system, and it just seems that to the extent that we invest in that and put all our eggs in that basket, we start to ignore or not have enough investment left over for alternative energy and an energy future that's more responsible in terms of greenhouse gases and climate change.
Well, of course, even if you accept the faulty premise that gas is better for the environment than oil, that's really not true. But even if you accept that, we're still locking ourselves into a fossil fuel future and not looking at alternatives, not looking at efficiency, not looking at reducing demand, not looking at trying to find low impact renewable energy sources. You know, once that money is invested, once the society as a whole is investing in an infrastructure, whether it's the Keystone XL pipeline in the Midwest, whether it's, you know, this Energy East pipeline that they're talking about in Canada, or the natural gas pipeline, that commitment is made. That is the decision, not just by the company to do that, but it's a decision by the society to go in that direction.
Yes. So as we said at the top, the Public Service Board, a government body, is charged with taking a look at the overall attributes of this and deciding whether it should go forward and issue a certificate of public goods. So what actions can people take now? What is being done? You mentioned Rising Tide. I know they have a web page.
Yeah, they have a web page. They're trying to, you know, gain momentum and get people aware of what's going on, get them out to the meetings. You know, you need to really talk to the Public Service Department and give your comments there and let them know your concerns, and you know, because that's basically supposedly your advocacy group that's you know, bringing up the local people's concerns, and they really need to hear from more people, a lot of people, that, you know, this isn't the way to go.
So there are people who can formally intervene and participate in the Public Service Board process, and then the public can always send in comments.
You can send in comments. In order to intervene, you have to be directly impacted as well.
And they decide whether or not your interests are such that you would be approved as an intervener. But anyone can get on the Public Service Board page and submit a comment about this.
It is, but you know, it's not, as people in the Northeast Kingdom found when they were trying to oppose the industrial wind turbines in the last few years, that the Public Service Board process is pretty broken in terms of public participation. So Nate and Jane can intervene as landowners, and corporations can intervene like International Paper is an intervener,
Yes.
and other corporations. But it's pretty hard for the public to get in. It's a so-called quasi-judicious. Judicial. I'm stuck on judicious.
Quasi-judicious too.
Quasi-judicial process, and that doesn't have a lot of in.
Yeah.
Where we really have, I mean, we certainly should be putting comments in. And Rising Tide Vermont, if you go to their website or the Stop Vermont Gas website, you can sign a petition, you can send a postcard, you can register your comment, and that's a really good thing to do. But we also need to be putting pressure on the legislature and on the Public Service Department, which is supposed to be representing the public in this process, which is different from the Public Service Board, and really get them to do a deeper analysis of the project. They submitted testimony recently, and we went down, a group of us down to a demonstration at the Public Service Department a few weeks ago with a big rubber stamp. Because what they seem to be doing is rubber stamping this project, and we offered him this rubber stamp and said, here, you might as well have this because that's what you're doing. And it was just a graphic demonstration of the fact that they're not doing the analysis that is really necessary to represent the public good in this process. And they filed testimony where basically they said, this doesn't have much impact. And they weren't even doing a life cycle analysis of what the impact would be.
Yeah. So the challenge right now is to get people informed, educated, and to identify a way that they can become engaged here at this stage. Well, thank you both very much for being here. I think
Anytime.
It's a continuing story. We'll be continuing to engage with it in terms of representing our farmers.
They definitely need representation.
And we just have we have an interest in the bigger picture as well. And I know you two this will be your life extending into months and I hope not years ahead. But thanks for all your good work and thanks for being here. Okay, so this is Dave Rogers, and thank you for watching. And we'll be doing more of these chats in the future.